Hello, it's a pleasure to meet you, all of you. And today I thinking about, talking about this, subject, Korea startup ecosystem. So I'm kind of, wondering how many people actually here interested in, Korean startup. Anybody? Yeah. Have you anybody ever worked for the Korean startup here before? As an internship or whatever? Not that many. Okay. So let me briefly introduce myself. I started my career as a newspaper journalist about 20 years ago. I was a reporter covering IT industry in Korea. And then about 11 years ago, I moved to the company named Down Communication. It's like Yahoo. It's internet portal, second largest internet portal in Korea. So there, I worked as a IT executive responsible for running internet operations like the contents and some partnership and things like that. And from 2009, I was dispatched to the Lycos, as the CEO of the Lycos in Boston, because the Down Communication acquired old, portal Lycos in the U.S. So there, I worked as a CEO about 3 years and turned around the company and sold the company to the Indian company. And then I moved to the Silicon Valley and worked as a investor for about 1.5 years and learned a little bit about the Silicon Valley startup ecosystem. And then about 5 years ago, I came back to Korea and started working for the Startup Alliance. So let me briefly introduce about the Startup Alliance. So Startup Alliance is a joint effort between Korean government and the Naver. Naver is a search engine company, the largest internet company in Korea. So they determined to make some kind of some non-profit organizations for helping Korean startups to grow and go global. So that's why we started. So our mission is connecting the people, the entrepreneurs to the stakeholder like the investors, schools, and government officials and media people, and helping them to grow and getting the opportunity to get invested. So we had a venue like this in Gangnam, Taehenan Road, and we're doing lots of activities like this kind of conferences, big conferences, and I actually have many speaking engagement like this and speak at the National Assembly and schools and always trying to be an advocate for startup. We also make this kind of infographics in order to introduce a lot of good Korean startups to the people. So this is one of our infographics showing promising Korean startups. I'll show you later. So this kind of, and also we had this big seminar with Mr. Peter Thiel some years ago, and like this. So we have almost every day this kind of events, so provide opportunity for the people to know more about the startup and also engage with the startups. And also we support startups to go global. So one of our well-known program is named the Japan Bootcamp. So we selected about 10 to 20 Korean startups, then let them go to Japan and introduce them to the local investors and the big companies like the Line, Yahoo Japan, and Google Japan, and so forth. Okay, so then I'm going to talk about the Korean startup kind of industry overview kind of things and what's happening there. And also I'm going to introduce many interesting startups here, and I'm going to show you a lot of their promotional videos. So, as you know that the Korea, this country's population is about 50 million. So it's not big country, it's not that small country. If you compare it to the countries like the small European countries like the Finland, Sweden, Netherlands, they all have about 5 million to some 10 million people. So compared to them, we are not the small country, but the most of Korean people think that the Korea is very small because maybe we are in between Japan and China. So, but I think that this 50 million population is not that small, and the economic size is about the 11th largest economy in the world. And also, as you know, that we are well known for the many big companies like the Samsung, LG, Hyundai Motors, and SK, and things like that. There are already many successful IT companies, and we're known for the fast internet infrastructure. I think that the other countries now almost catching up. So this is not that great advantage anymore. But Korea is actually well known for its mobile infrastructure and things like that. So there are already so many good local IT companies, especially internet companies. So there was the first wave of the internet boom in Korea. That was back in the 1999 and 2000 and something like that. So at that time, this kind of companies actually emerged as big IT corporations. As you know, Naver, Down, Gmarket is an e-commerce company acquired by the eBay, and Megastudy is well known for its online education company, and Nexon is the online gaming company. So they are all unicorn companies actually, and very successful. But after this 2000, early 2000, and there wasn't that many the new companies actually coming up. But after 2010, there's new wave of the new companies actually starting to emerge. I think that maybe thanks to the iPhone, because iPhone first start selling in Korea at the end of the 2009. So right after people starting to use an iPhone here, and people thinking that there's tremendous opportunity for starting some kind of mobile startup. So with that, Kakao actually started. One of the founder of the Naver started this company, Kakao, with the Kakao Talk, and he became very successful startups, and now is merged with the Down, and now their market cap is about almost $10 billion company. And Coupang is also a very successful company, and 배달의 민족 is a food delivery company, and those companies actually leading the second wave of the startup boom in Korea. So it was like looking good, and the amount of the venture investment in Korea is like growing for last 5 years. So this year they say it's going to be about $3 billion actually going to invested in startups in Korea. So apparently things are looking very good. But this is kind of a little bit old presentation of mine, so please bear in mind it's a little bit silly sometimes. But however, the dilemma is I think that still our economic growth rate is not that great. Actually, we have still struggling, and also people always saying that Korea's problem is that our economy is too much dependent on those 5 companies, 5 or 6 companies, and still the most of the export is from the semiconductor, and semiconductor is actually dependent heavily on the Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix. So if we don't have that kind of semiconductor boom, our economy is going to be in jeopardy. So everybody knows that. So about 5 years, so we are too much dependent on the those 재벌, and they are old and not aggressive enough, I think. And sadly, he recently passed away. And so I think that those Hyundai founders and Samsung founders, like modern days kind of startup founders, they actually started a new company and they grow them into the some global conglomerate, right? But now those 재벌s actually they became old and conservative. So the problem is that they are actually hesitant and reluctant to make the investment for the future. So as we all know, Hyundai Motors, they have to invest in the electric cars and the self-driving car technology and things like that. There are so many things to do, but about 4 years ago, Hyundai Motors actually decided to purchase the land in Gangnam for paying about $9 billion. And this actually angered so many people, So they think that those 재벌s think that buying the land is more probably a stable investment than making investment for the future. So, and I also like to mention this. About 3 years ago, I did some analysis for the Forbes richest people's ranking in Korea, and I noticed that most people inherited their wealth from their ancestor, fathers or grandfather and things like that. And as you can see, a lot of richest people in Korea is from Samsung or Hyundai or SK family. Like this. So surprisingly, about 23 people of 30 richest people in Korea have inherited their wealth from the parents. So I just compare this to the China, and China is like this. Yeah, it's a little old, but as you can see, Alibaba, Baidu, or Tencent and Wanda, or things like that. Maybe that's because China's economic growth is been kind of newer than that of the Korea. Maybe that's why. But I think that the issue is that Korea also needs that kind of power from some kind of founders, new young and founders, and I think that's the startups. So it is no wonder that the previous administration, almost all the kind of government in the world, they're pushing for helping kind of boost the entrepreneurship and trying to make more startup. So the previous administration, President Park, his slogan was creative economy, and the new President Moon Jae-in, he's also stressed fourth industrial revolutions and also innovation growth. But it's actually the same thing. I think that they're trying to boost, promote entrepreneurship, also trying to make more startup and let them be the growth engine for the future. So it's a fourth industrial revolution. It's like this. It's kind of, I think, a marketing term, but Korean government actually decided to embrace the fourth industrial revolution term, and make this presidential committee for the post-industrial revolution. I'm one of them. And also, Korean government decided to, upgrade the small and medium business agency. The department which responsible for the helping, startup, and they actually upgraded to the ministry level. So now Ministry of the SMEs and Startup is responsible for helping Korean startups, and then they're pouring more budget, more money for the venture capital or running the supporting program for the entrepreneurs and things like that. So the reason why the venture investment amount is actually increased dramatically this year is because the government actually pouring much more money, or more, almost 1 billion the US dollars for the startup. So that was current status. So let me just go back about 5 years ago, and what was the the startup ecosystem in Korea actually. So 5 years ago, when I first started Startup Alliance and in Korea, and what I noticed was that the lack of two things: lack of early stage venture investment, and secondly, lack of the startup community. And I think that's very important thing, because without the investment, you're not able to start the startup and grow. Because in order to grow the company very fast, you need the capital. Without the capital, it's not that easy to grow fast. So maybe you just stay there. And also, in order to grow and get the help from the the community, you need to have a vibrant startup community. But about 5 years ago, that was not the case in Korea. So in the past, actually, Korean government also decided to make the venture capital industry. So in order to grow the startup, you need to have a very healthy and vibrant investor community. The most investors actually the venture capital, the risk capital, somebody who willing to make an investment and the taking a risk, right? But it's not that easy, because if your country does not have successful the startup, people don't willing to put the money there. So somebody needs to start, somebody needs to put some money for the venture capital and make them as a kind of catalyst for the startup investment. So about 10 years ago, Korean government established this company named the Korea Venture Investment Corp. It's the kind of company under the Ministry of the Startups, and government injected about 2 billion for Korean venture capital. So if you're investor who wants to make the venture fund, and you first go to Korean government, like here, and you apply for your fund, some write the application, and you're proving that you're qualified investor and things like that. And government, when every kind of condition is met, and government actually giving you the money for the fund, about some 50%, 60%. So that helps to investors make their own fund and let them invest for the startups. So it helps to make so far more than 400 new venture funds in Korea, and for each fund make the couple of dozens of the investment from it. So after this KBIC is established, the amount of the Korean government, amount of the venture investment in Korea is starting to increase like this, and now it's about here. Here I think. So venture investment is actually starting to grow, but about 5 years, the kind of people's common sense kind of notions about venture investment is like that venture capitalists, they don't make investment for the early stage, entrepreneurs. So in order to start your own company and for you need to get some money from your family or your angel investor and things like that. But people are always complaining that that's really, some difficult. So that was the case about 5 years ago. So the government started to, again, step into that kind of situation and providing more funding opportunities for early stage startups. So there are many, early stage startup program in Korea from the central government and local government, but the most popular government support program for startup is TIPS. TIPS is an acronym for Tech Incubator Program for Startup. It's run by the SMBA, the Small and Medium Business Administrations. So it's like a matching investment fund by the government. So its mission is that encourage the private early stage venture investment by providing the matching fund. So there are pre-selected investors, incubator or accelerators. So when they make the investment about 100,000, about 1억, and for the early stage startups, and they're getting your equity. But after they pass these TIPS committees and the validations, and government side provide additional 500,000 5억 for R&D support fund. And they don't have to paying back everything. When they fail, they don't have to pay it back. And when they're successful, they're supposed to, some paying back about the 40%. So this is a very good deal. And sometimes they're providing, 400,000 as a marketing support fund. So it's sometimes a 1 to 9 match. So it's like encourage the kind of private investors for making more investment for the startups, and government, rather than government identify the promising startup out there, and they just follow the private investors kind of selections. So this program is actually kind of benchmarked, copied from the Israeli program there. Israel actually had this program, technological incubator program, from back in 1991. So this is very successful program in Israel. So many countries actually, get this program from Israel, but probably Korea is the most actively embrace this program and provide much fun for the startup right now. So now this TIPS program is actually working with about 40 early stage investors and accelerator together. So they giving these companies about the 10 to 20 slots every day. So they have a right to submit their portfolio company to the TIPS committee when it's passed, and these companies is entitled to get additional some 5억 or 500,000 or some 900,000 from the government. So it helps to identify the good global facing tech driven companies, and let them don't worry about the money too much, and let them just focus about the their product and service for at least 1 and 2 years. So helping them to giving more runway for the growth. So one of the well-known companies is Job Planet, and this company actually provides some the review system for each companies, and helping that job searchers to get more information about the company. They first get seed funding from the TIPS program, and then they raise the more fund from the private investors. And this company is actually making business card scanners named Remember. It's very successful, you know, the product. And they first get the money from the tips and then raise this amount and actually acquired by the neighbor last year. So let me show you a little bit. So the differentiations of this product compared to other, you know, business card scanning, you know, the app, is that there's actually the people, the typists, who actually read the business card and the typing in. Actually, it's not automatically kind of scanning, recognize OCR. It's not OCR technology, right? So it's like a kind of stupid, old-fashioned technology, but they're actually trying to do that way, you know, on purpose, because that it guarantees 100% accuracy. So now this program is app is very successful, acquired by the neighbor, and they just about 2 months ago they launched this application in Japan. So starting to expand it to Japan market right now. So I'm told depend on the this app. So I have about the 8,000 business card actually amassed during my 5-year tenure in Startup Alliance, and I'm able to search anybody among the 8,000 some business card thanks to this app. So secondly, another big hurdle for Korean startup ecosystem back in 5 years ago was the lack of the startup culture or community there. Because everywhere I go, most of very vibrant startup ecosystem, I'm able to see this kind of the place, right? So it is very important to have this kind of some atmosphere, this kind of event, because this kind of event actually bonding the people together, let them share their ideas, and maybe they're able to run into the future teammates and the co-founders and the investors and things like that. But 5 years ago, there wasn't that much in Korea. And so if you're interested in starting your own company, and you're probably not able to find any kind of event or place to go to get to meet the people or get the information. But for recent 5 years ago, Gangnam emerged as a center of the startup boom, maybe because of the most of Korean venture capital is based in Gangnam. So along the way, there's a new community center, startup hub is actually open for last 5 years. The first one was this D-Camp. D-Camp. How many of you actually visited D-Camp before? Is there anybody? So the most of the event is for the in Korean, but there are several other many programs also conducted in English. So I think I highly recommend you to visit this kind of some places. So D-Camp is made by the bank foundations, and this is kind of providing the office for the startup or investors, and they have a big event hall and provide the venue for the startup related event. And this place is started, and Startup Alliance, our place is actually started, and Maru 180 is also the startup building, provide the office and some event space for the startups. And Tipstown and Naver Accelerator and Google Campus Seoul and those places actually becoming kind of magnet for the people who interested for the startup. So this is our place. So we have this kind of event. So startup, the founder is talking about his company. There's a pitch and demo day, and let them share their knowledge and experience. And when there's the VIP visit Korea and wants to meet the startup, and those people usually visit those kind of DCamp or Google Campus, Maru 180, and this is the pitching event like this. And this is the pitch contest, the startup contest at the Maru 180. So the whole building is actually for the startup and investors, and there's usually a cafe. And for in recent 2 years, another interesting trend is that the emergence of the co-working space. How many of you been to the WeWork before? WeWork. Do you know what the WeWork is? It's some co-working space. So this is the co-working space map of Seoul we made actually. And as you can see, this is the Gangnam-gu. And there's so many co-working space actually popping up. It's more than 30 only in Gangnam, along the Tehran Road and to other places. So the WeWork is also the startups. Started from the New York, actually founded 2010. They actually started as a startup which provide short-term office rental for the entrepreneur, more small businesses and things like that. And they built their own some culture and style and get a lot of funding, especially from the SoftBank, about 3 billion, 4 billion. So their actually valuation is whopping some 20 billion. And they actually expanded to the Korea, Seoul, about just 2 years ago. So this was their first location in Gangnam Station, near Gangnam Station. So when they first opened their space, and I was a little bit kind of some skeptical. So I was wondering, why would the small startup paying the high price of the lease for the WeWork and stay there, because they don't tolerate those kind of expensive the rental. But contrary to my thinking, and WeWork became so successful for last 2 years, and they just announced about 12 locations, and this is their location: 여의도, 서울, 광화문, 을지로, 삼성, and 역삼. And they, when they announced like this, and they actually use almost half of those big buildings and convert it into the beautiful place for the entrepreneurs, and even change the name of the building as a WeWork building, and just pouring the money. So this is their 여의도 locations, and they provide a free beer here, like and coffee, and so people, a lot of startups actually attracted this kind of co-working space. And they actually moved into the this kind of co-working space these days. They're working like this. And so this is the Korean, counterpart, kind of competitor for the WeWork, named the Fast 5, so work and community. They also, fastly opening their location along the Tehran Road and other locations, and so many, startups and small business actually start working here these days. And big corporations like the Hyundai Card and Hanwha Investment, and those companies also follow suit. They opening up their own brand of the co-working space and provide this kind of space. So this is eventually kind of changing real estate market, the office market in Korea these days. This is the Dream Plus by the Hanwha group. Like this. And government also opening community center, the startup entrepreneur center around the country right now. So from last previous government, they started this creative economy innovation center, and they asked these big corporations to responsible for these centers for each province. So they started these places, and this is by this Seoul city government and Seoul the startup hub based in Mapo over there. And they also provide this kind of event space and also office space for early stage startups. So there are plenty of places actually, office space actually provided for the startup in Korea. And this is Pangyo. Pangyo is also becoming the hot place for the tech company and the startups. So thanks to this kind of changes, the more investment, the more community, more spaces for the startups. As a result, the market is booming. So I think that there was a lot of promising sign, because of the favorable lot of some support program from the government and pouring the money for the provide the incentive for the investors. Many entrepreneurs, successful entrepreneurs, or the financial companies actually turning into the early stage venture investment. So these are the new breed of the early stage investors and incubators and accelerators, and they provide more money for the early stage startups and helping them to grow. I think that this is also very encouraging sign is that the prominent successful entrepreneurs, they are actually turning into angels and venture capitalists. So in the past, the first generation of successful entrepreneur in Korea, and when they, people are joking that after they making money, they are just buying, luxury cars and buildings, luxury apartment, real estate, things like that. They don't think to invest on other startups. But these days, those people have passions for helping young startups and young entrepreneurs, and with their knowledge and experience, and they're willing to spend their time with the young entrepreneurs and helping them. So they actually made this kind of venture capitals, and they make very many investment. So one of the icon of the Korean venture industry is this guy, the Mr. Jang Byung-gyu. He's actually chairman of the presidential committee of fourth industrial revolutions. And after he sold his first company, first Snow, the search engine company, to Naver, and he started making lots of small angel investment. And then he decided to make the early stage venture capital about 10 years ago, Bone Angels, and they funded over 100 startup in Korea. So this is their Bone Angels venture capital team. So unlike old and other traditional venture capital, which is most partners actually from the having financial background, these Bone Angels, their partners have the startup founder experience and the engineering background. So they claiming that they probably provide more helpful advice for the startup. And this is the first startup accelerator in Korea, the primer. Actually, this also started 2010. Do you guys know what the accelerator is? Anybody? What is the accelerator? What is the startup accelerator? Do you know, anybody knows the Y Combinator in Silicon Valley? There are some startup investors named the Y Combinator in Silicon Valley, Mountain View, California, and they started about 2005. So the accelerator, they start making the definitions of the accelerator. So accelerator is some early stage investors. They have some kind of formula, right? They getting the applications from the large number of the startups from around the world. It's like the school. So, and they are doing screening document, kind of screening. After that, they have to do some interview, and they accepted the batch of the startups. The most of time is could be just 5 or 10 or a couple of dozen. So after they accepted those number of selected startup, they are making some small amount of money for the investment, mostly from the about 200,000 to 20,000 to 100,000, and they get about 5% of the company. And for about 3 months, they provide very intensive training and mentoring for startup and let them grow fast. And after 3 months, they do demo day. So demo day is like this kind of places, and each startup make the presentation, pitching, selling their product and services, and those accelerators, actually they invited the investor, venture capitalist, and potential kind of business development people and things like that, and let them invest those let them make a following investment for those early stage their own the startups. So that's the accelerator actually, making small investment, provide 3 months of the mentoring, and then provide demo day opportunity, and helping them to get the following investment and the growth. So the primer was the first the accelerator in Korea, and then after that there's many accelerators actually started in Korea as well. So one of the well-known accelerator is named the Spark Labs. So Spark Lab is well known for its huge demo day. So they do the demo day for kind of public event for the general public. So they do this kind of event at the COEX about twice a year. So this is kind of big event for just ordinary people to know about the startup. So let me show you a little bit about their video. So this is the demo day highlight. So let me quickly show you just one sample of the demo day pitching.
저희 회사를 세상에 납치하는 이유로는 엑스퍼트만 주는.
Question and many HR practices. This is the reality. Due to this huge problem and also big opportunity, there are a lot of new HR tech startups in the US which are disrupting the HR market. Huge investment from the leading businesses.
The largest SMB market in the world is Southeast Asia. In Southeast Asia, there are 70 million SMBs, 70 million, 14 times bigger than the US SMB market. But more importantly, in Southeast Asia, there is no advanced HR software yet. In other words, there is no market leader in the largest market in the world. Now let's look at the HR landscape of SMBs. For those SMBs, there are two choices: manual HR practices and legacy HR software. In the case of manual HR practices, the approval process can take days or even weeks. We've all been there, right? It's so inefficient. So actually, there's nothing more to say.
So partners
And as for the legacy HR
accelerators,
software,
what
their
they're
usability
doing
has no
is that
difference
the,
than using Excel file. Come on, who wants to use Excel file every day?
helping those entrepreneurs
But even worse.
developing their product and business model, and also let them, make the very, clear and precise and, concise those kind of pitching presentations. And they actually provide so many kind of some advice for making perfect pitch, and also getting the following investment for the other prominent, venture capitalists. So that's what they do. So many good startups like this, they actually applying for this kind of some programs around the country. So there are many, I think about several well-known accelerators in this country, and they're actually running this kind of program, so helping the startups to grow. And among them in the world, the most well-known venture accelerator is the Y Combinators, and there are some others like the TechStar, and you probably heard that 500 startups, and they're running their own startup accelerator programs, and they're getting the application from all around the world.
How much are you going to charge?
So thanks to this kind of startup boom, and actually the most of the Korean young students been kind of very conservative, I think, and they starting to turn around the possibility of the joining the startups. And so from the well-known schools like KAIST and Seoul National University, those graduates starting to start their own company, and also they're joining their other friends kind of or 선배s startups, and it's kind of booming. Also, interestingly, in Korea, and many prominent people, the kind of top talents from the consulting firm like the BCG and McKinsey and those consulting company. Actually, I noticed that the McKinsey office is just above here, 20th floor, and also now the employees of the Samsung Electronics and LG and SK and those people, also many young people is starting interesting startup these days. And in order to grow the startup ecosystem, I think that also very important kind of formula is that how we can bring foreign investors to this country. Because for the growth stage, it is very some critical to have international investors for your startups because they're helping you to expand it to other country and giving you a more kind of trust and credibility for getting the more funding from the international investors. So these are the well-known foreign investors from the Silicon Valley and from Japan for making startup investment in Korea. Among them, the most well-known investor is the Altos Ventures. So Altos Venture is actually founded by this gentleman named Han Kim. He's actually from Silicon Valley. He's the Korean American graduate of the West Point and served the military, U.S. Army, and then he finished his MBA degree at the Stanford University, and after that he started his own venture capital in Silicon Valley. After about 10 years in Silicon Valley, he started to turn his eye into the Korean startups about 10 years ago and start making a lot of investment. And about 5 years ago, he started to make some specific Korea-specific venture fund, and has been made a lot of investment here. So among them, there are many well-known companies like the Coupang and or Mimibox and Hyperconnect and things like that. So their Korean fund is getting bigger and bigger. And the recent second, Korean venture fund is about the 110 million, and they're about to close. The next fund is I heard that about the larger fund. And this gentleman, Mr. Yurimoto of the Global Brain, is a well-known venture capital in Japan, and he also formed the Korean kind of fund and make a lot of investment for Korean startups, so more than 10. So there are a growing number of Korean startups actually get funded from the international investors, and among them, the most famous company is that probably the Coupang. It's Amazon of Korea, and people saying, and they actually got the investment from the Sequoia Capital in Silicon Valley, and after that get $1 billion from the SoftBank. So let me show you about the video about the Coupang a little bit, and then move on.
About unique approach to detail. Pay attention, these guys are going to be big. They have an IPO one day.
Coupang is the Amazon of South Korea. Over 50% of the country's adults have the app installed on their smartphones.
Our motto is, let's create a world in which customers ask, how did I ever live without Coupang?
Coupang was founded in 2010 by Bom Kim, a Korean-born entrepreneur who dropped out of Harvard Business School to start the company, originally modeled after Groupon, and then eBay as a third-party seller, before the company pivoted again into its current business model to improve customer service.
We realized consistently, day in and day out, half of our customer complaints were around delivery experience. That's why we decided to make this massive investment in fulfillment and last mile.
Its last mile network, carried out by over 4,000 delivery men, known as Supermen, deliver orders within 24 hours as part of its rocket delivery service.
If this is the first order in a while, and he'll say, Mr. Sorkin, welcome back. Or if this is your first order, he'll say, welcome to Coupang, Mr. Sorkin.
South Korea is currently the world's 5th largest market for e-commerce. By 2022, it will be the third largest behind China and the United States.
If you just take a look out at the windows here, the density in Korea, the density in Seoul, I mean, I've lived in many US cities. You just can't find this kind of density in American cities. But that's actually how a lot of Asian cities are evolving. This is the future of how people are going to live. And there are a lot of problems in this market that we're solving that haven't been solved before.
Kim sees Seoul as a template for how it will approach its future markets. Coupon's investors include SoftBank and BlackRock, and the speculation is that the company could soon go public in the United States by 2020.
However, they also faces a lot of criticism because they are losing tons of money every year. So a lot of people are still kind of skeptical about their future. But the Uber and so many other some hyper growth companies actually also losing lots of money. So I'm not that skeptical about that company. So looking for their IPO going forward. So in Korea, another change is that the big corporations and the attitude toward startup of the big corporations been always kind of mediocre. They're not interested too much about because they don't actually need to working with the startups and making investment, and so the exit activity, the merger and acquisitions by the big corporations always tepid, that not that many, and the amount of those M&A is very small compared to the U.S. or China, but that kind of thing has been some change these days. And so the companies like the Samsung Electronics and the Hyundai or the Naver, they're running their own accelerator or venture investment arm these days, and also encouraging their own employees to start their the startup companies like this. The Naver making lots of investment. Naver even established a venture fund in France. They're eyeing on the startup investment in European countries, and they made their own office space in Station F in Paris. So in conclusion, I think that there are 8 conditions for vibrant startup ecosystem. I got it from the Crossroad the report from in Australia, and so in order to make the vibrant ecosystem, we need this kind of things. So I think that in Korea's situation, the availability of capital is kind of improving. So early stage investment is their planning these days, and Series A, B, the amount like 10 million, 20 million, that's fine, but the capital is still needed. And about visible success, there are many successful, the new companies and entrepreneurs. So I think it's getting better, and experienced mentors. There are many successful entrepreneurs turning into the investors and willing to provide their advice. So it's improving as well. Collaborative, culture with the big corporation and things like that, and it's getting better. So I think that the Korean government, Korean startup ecosystem situation is getting better. Virtuous circle actually begins. So this is the map of the startup ecosystem in Korea. So I think this is important that about 3 years ago, I decided to make this graphic in order to explain the startups in Korea. So I made the small rules that the startups actually raised more than $1 million the US dollar from the venture capital, and I just put it in this graphics. So at that time, from the media, also there, press release, and there are about 80 startups out there, which we can put in this graphic. So we keep updating these graphics almost every week, and it's growing like this. And there are about 400, the startups out there, which is raised over $1 million from the venture capital. So I think that I can explain almost each and every startups, and have very interesting, some products or business model. So e-commerce and the contents companies, so among contents company, and this company Smart Study have ping pong character is also very successful. So this is the ping pong, which makes the Smart Study make this interesting. So this company is actually founded by the former Nexon game company employee, Mr. Kim Min-suk, and they started to provide some kind of interesting the videos for the infant and the children, and they happen to make this mega hit. For several years, and this was a kind of big hit. And also probably the most successful company is that the well-known company is TOS, which is provide the money transfer, the easy money transfer for the young people. So you can just send the money without knowing their bank account number. Just send it, that way with passcode or touch ID. So they now have they started about 4 years ago. I thought that they never able to get succeed, but now they actually have about 8 million users, and probably one of the most successful and popular app among the young people. And their market valuation is now about the 800 million. So also, let me skip to some company intro. There's too many. I hope you can check this the startups and from our Startup Alliance website, and you can download this map. So quickly skip. So the kind of the challenge of Korean startup ecosystem was that lack of the exit, because probably one of the most important kind of components for successful startup ecosystem is having more exit. Exit is M&A or IPO. Like exit means that you let your investors get the money back. So when companies actually sold, or when companies get listed in public market, they're actually sell their equity. Investors are able to sell their equity and get the money back. So making money from the exit activity is very important. But in Korea, there was not that many successful exits so far. So that was some challenge. And so for most of the country, the same situations. So one of the most well-known exit is that this company, and Kaba Korea, which company has this cosmetic brand named the AHC. This company actually sold to the Unilever for about $3 billion dollars last year. And this company, the Style Nandar, is actually sold it's a fashion e-commerce company, also provide the cosmetic new brand targeting young people, and founded by this woman and sold to the L'Oréal in France for about 500 million. And this company is not exited yet, but the Blue Hole Studio is kind of runaway success with the game named the Battleground these days, and so their valuation is about 4 billion now. And you probably know that the BTS, and BTS is also made by this Big Hit Entertainment. So this company is also kind of the startup, company, which identify the kind of talent out there and growing them as a world star and makes a lot of business like the characters and or contents business. And so this company is actually the valuation is also reaching 1 billion. So very successful case. So the Han Kim, the managing director of the startup Altos Ventures, he said the big exit is about to come, and this is the notable IPO, and this is not the startups, and the game company is always very popular, and Pearl Abyss is also the very successful the game company last year, and this year was Carpet 24, the e-commerce platform company's been very successful IPO this year. So this company is a great IPO candidate. And blockchain and ICO is also pretty hot in Korea. So there are so many blockchain companies and exchange and media, and also ICO is kind of booming in Korea right now. So these are the kind of several selected ICO cases in Korea. So it was too long, I think, and so I think that let me kind of stop here, and I still have some slides to talk about, but I think it's better to get some questions and answering during the kind of Q&A, and maybe I can use a little bit more slides. Thank you.
Thank you for your wonderful lecture. I actually have two questions. The first one is, as most people know, Korea relied on agriculture industries for a long time and has developed very quickly. What do you think was the trigger for the growth of IT industries in Korea? And my second question is, if I was a private investor, what should I look for in IT companies to invest in?
The first question, the kind of what's the trigger for the growth of the IT industry in Korea? It's probably because that the maybe Korean people is very interested in the kind of state of art, high tech kind of thing, and especially young people like to handling playing with the computers or smartphone and things like that. They're always searching for something to do with it. So back in the 2000, I think that one of the prime examples is that because of the high tech or state of art and all those big companies, big telecom companies, they make a huge investment for the infrastructure like the broadband and things like that. So with the broadband, people looking for things to do. So one of the big thing was that the searching the information and things like that, and they probably able to very some interesting things to do on the broadband. That was the online game. So StarCraft is probably the most successful game in history in Korea. So Korean gamers are well known for those playing well in the StarCraft, and there was so many PC bang, PC game bang out there. So when I was in the school, back in the college, and most people just go to the billiard, you know. And then, but after the next generation, people just go to the game bang and play game together. And that kind of, some attitude and their passion actually moved to the some mobile games and mobile kind of, things. And so there's huge demand from the young people and willing to do something about the some IT computers and smartphone and things like that. So that's why a lot of companies actually coming out. The game companies, they making lots of good money, and because we are advanced in that area, and we are able to export those games to other countries, especially in China. So many, very successful and rich entrepreneurs actually from the game industry in Korea actually. So that's probably the one of the reason. And your second question was about what's the most important for making investment as a private investor for startups. It's probably always venture capitalists looking for kind of scalable kind of business, scalable item. So if you try to do something, some very meaningful product or service, although there is very interesting things, and always what matters is that the size of the market, and also whether it can grow fast, because the investors always looking for the return of the money in several years later. So the growth is very important, fast growth. So so that's why people, those investors, tends to invest in some kind of some product people using a lot. Frequency matters. For example, the kind of highest M&A deal in the world is probably the WhatsApp acquisition of Facebook. KakaoTalk, Line, WhatsApp, or Telegram has huge valuations because that's the app people using almost every day, very often. So if you're making some kind of product is very interesting and good, but if you use it once a year or once a several years, that's not worth it. But for example, app for selling or buying used car. So you download the app, but you use it just for buying or selling used car. Probably you just use it for once in several years. So no matter what you make great product, people is not going to use a lot. So there's not that much, some scalability and things like that. So repeatability and scalability is probably the most important thing of the product or business model. And also, very important thing is that the people are always saying that people, the team. So almost, certainly most of the time, the first item and first, things the entrepreneur is trying to do is not going well, as he or she planned. So there is always hurdles and obstacles, and that makes that entrepreneurs just give up or just. So it is very important to have whether those entrepreneurs have a tenacity or kind of passions to do not give up, and also embrace their teammate, and so the probably execution ability to execute and things like that. So investors, so you have to observe and watch certain potential entrepreneurs you to invest for at least for a couple of months, and then when he or she is how to act that some unexpected things to happen, or whether he's achieved he promised before, and after that you decide your investment decisions.
Hello, I was just wondering, I noticed there was a lot of overlap between Korean startups and American companies. So I was just wondering what you think of Korean startups faring in the international market.
Korean startups faring.
Like how they'll perform in the international market, or if you think in the future that they'll just need to be catered to a Korean market.
I am hoping that Korean startups to go abroad, go to international market, and be more successful. But that's very some tough things to do because this market is actually our product most of the time is actually learned on the Korean language. So outside Korea, it's not that easy to expand like English, some product, international product, and this the IT environment here is most people use Naver instead of Google, and KakaoTalk instead of WhatsApp and things like that, and use Coupang instead of Amazon and things like that. So this might be a kind of advantage for the Korean IT companies, but for small Korean startups, that's kind of a little bit of some hurdles and disadvantage when they decided to go outside, because they don't know, they don't understand the Google environment and the SME, SEO, and search engine optimization, how to working on the buying the advertisement in other environment and things like that. So I know that the many Korean some companies and struggle to go out once they kind of comfortable in Korea. So thinking global from the start is very important. But in order to do that, they have to expose themselves to the other environment so much. So there are several successful startups actually internationally here. For example, the company named HyperConnect, which provide agile the video chatting app, and but interestingly, they are not famous in Korea. Almost nobody knows that company, but the very successful in Middle East and European countries and things like that.
Thank you so much for your wonderful lecture. I was curious, like before I didn't have so much knowledge about the startup. Today I have a little bit, and now I'm curious to invest in a startup maybe in future. Then, like, where should I invest? A country with where the GDP growth rate is almost 8%, or a country like Korea where the GDP is almost 2.8 or 3%. Which one is more profitable? Just in case I am an Indian and the growth rate of like India GDP growth rate is almost 8%, and so I wanted to know the difference, like where I can get like more profit in investing. And the second question, you didn't explain about what are the risk factors of like doing investment in a startup.
Obviously, the hottest startup market in the world is the most of the time is big market, like the U.S. is one of the largest market in the world, and second largest and probably going to be the largest market in the world is China. So China startup, the industry startup ecosystem is really hot, and India is growing really fast. So there is some interesting indicator of the startup ecosystem. How much is booming or not is the number of the unicorn startup. So unicorn startup is that the company of the valuation over 1 billion before the exit. So that's the definition of the unicorn. So in order to become a unicorn, at least you need to get investment size of the 100 million, and then probably you get the you give about 10% of the equity, and then your valuation is about 1 billion. So in the U.S., there are about 120 plus unicorn companies out there. In China, they said about almost 70 the unicorn startups out there. So so there are about 250, 60, some unicorn startup in the world. In India, I believe about 10 unicorn startups actually exist in India. So that's the third many unicorn startups in the world. So in Korea, because the market size and because of the size of the investment, and there are not that many, some unicorn. Only Coupang and the company of the Yellow Mobile is of unicorn companies. So which means that that means that India have about 10 unicorn companies, which means that there are a lot of foreign investors actually go to India and they're making huge investment, right? So the companies actually make the Indian unicorn is that, for example, the SoftBank or Amazon or Tencent or in China, and those companies, and they're making $100 million, the investment that makes the unicorn. So clearly, there are large opportunity out there, but as an individual, this investors, it's not that easy to, make investment in the unicorn companies. So in the U.S., they say that the reason why, because market is big and there are many unicorns, but there are so many thousands of the startups and tens of thousands of startups. You have to find the potential unicorn startups in order to make money. So that's not that easy, right? So angel investment, as an angel investors, I think that you probably make good money in small, countries like Korea or some European countries like Finland or Norway, and if you're able to find a good opportunity there, and there's a chance that you make the good money because that not that much some competition among the investors. So so it depends on how some investors actually behave and find their opportunity out there.
Thank you for your presentation. I actually wanted to ask for you to elaborate a little bit on the particularities or the kind of special characteristics of the Korea market that you think entrepreneurs should be aware of. So for example, I spent some time in China, in Beijing, and as you said, it's quite a vibrant ecosystem there, but a lot of people talk about the challenges of the Chinese market in terms of government regulation and so on. So I wanted to ask for you to talk about the Korean case.
You stayed in Beijing before?
Yes, and I attended some startup grand events. So it's very interesting too.
Okay, I just got back from the Beijing this morning, so.
Cool, yeah.
Yeah. What's the specific special thing about Korea? How long have you been here?
Maybe just few months.
A few months.
Spent time in Busan and now in Seoul.
Now in Seoul. So I kind of I think it's probably similar to other China or Japan, and because the large number of the population is actually concentrated in the metropolitan area like the Seoul, and the young generations actually they are stick to the smartphone and willing to try out something kind of new product. So they're willing to. So there's a lot of growth among the product targeting the young generation here. So people are very open to order food from the app. So there are big market in for the the food or the related kind of some business here. And I think that due to the fast internet and the mobile, people are watching lots of the video. The YouTube is really popular here, and people also using a lot of social media here. So there are a lot of the new wave of the young the YouTuber, and they are starting to broadcasting a lot of interesting things, and also there's a live commerce company, and in order to eyeing those kind of chances, and they're learning very effective the social media campaign on Facebook or YouTube and KakaoTalk, and started to gaining lots of the revenue, but older generation is still, I think, that the conservative for try out something new. So there are lots of divide between the older generation and young generation here. So some startups and really popular among the young people, but the older generation completely don't know even about the existence of those companies, and so that kind of things is also the characteristic of the Korean startup ecosystem, I think. And also we suffer from the very strict regulation here. So regulation is some kind of big hurdle for the kind of new industry like ride sharing, telemedicine, or the other, and so forth. So there's a lot of some debate and discussions for whether we should allow those kind of some new industry here. But those young companies actually facing the kind of very strict kind of the protest and oppositions from the incumbent and or the kind of existing the kind of companies like the taxi industry and things like that. So there's a huge hurdle yet, and also the market is mostly dominated by the big companies, big chaebol, those corporations. So the problem is that they are not willing to buy the product from the small company that much. So making successful B2B based software here is a kind of challenge.
Well, thank you for your lecture today. Actually, my question is about, because I noticed in your lectures that I do appreciate that Korean government see a lot of measures to help those new startups to start their business. But I do notice that, as you mentioned, the Korean angels and the venture investors, I noticed them, but most of them are actually not from one of the table companies. I actually did some research before this. It's like if the new startup companies in South Korea, they got a really good idea. Those table companies, they can just buy them out, or as you mentioned, they can just don't buy their products. So it's really hard for them. So do you have any suggestion for that to solve this kind of dilemma?
So what you're saying is that the big companies could steal the ideas from the startups. So it's an unfair market?
It's not about steal. It's about if the tables they want just to block this company, or this company has a really good idea, but the table has much more money. They can also just pay a lot of money to buy their idea out, to cut them from the market. Mm-hmm. So it's a really tricky situation for them.
Uh-huh.
So because I heard of lots of new companies, they had really good ideas, but it's some table companies, they feel unhappy about that, so they just buy them out, or
that's the probably true, but I actually, hearing the same question over and over from the most of young people here and a lot of people here. So I slightly have different opinion for that, because that kind of things actually happening almost everywhere in the world actually. The small companies, the startups, and even though they have great ideas, they always facing the huge competition from everywhere, So because idea is very easy to copy, idea is completely original kind of idea is most of the time not exist. So going forward, I think that as entrepreneurs, then you need to prove yourself, your idea is great, and by executing that idea. So in order to do that, probably the most important thing is that getting proper investment, the capital, to grow the company fast. Because unless your competitors, whether or not it's big or small, they're getting more money from other investors and grow fast, and then you're just gone away after that. So always my suggestion is that it is very important having the healthy venture capital industry in the country, because they are the one who actually support those entrepreneurs with the great ideas to grow fast and prove themselves and beating the big corporations. So if if the big corporation realize that it is very difficult to win over those innovative, fast-growing startups with the money, because those employees in big corporations, they are not focused enough for the growing, those things. The people in those passionate entrepreneurs, if they focus and day and night, 24 hours, and and they have more chance to win if they have a proper, capital. So as long as many investors out there, they could win over the big corporations. So idea and so it is also very important to make the level playing field for the small companies. But also important thing is that they provide some proper capital for them. So one prime example is probably the Coupang. They're actually started as a small startup back in 7 years ago, but they're competing against the big corporation. They're able to do it because they're prove themselves to the hyper growth, and they're actually persuade the investor like the SoftBank inject $1 billion. So with the $1 billion, you're able to compete against the big companies and sometimes winning it. So I think that the more, it is very important for Korean startups to getting more bigger capital from the investors. And in order to do that, they have to prove themselves to that the more, growing fast and the more, successful in global market.
As you mentioned that the Korean economy is much dependent on high techs, yes, and IT programs. So would it have problems in the future with developing other spheres in the country that in comparison with other countries?
Can you repeat the question?
Like now you said that the economy in Korea is much dependent on IT, yes, high techs, yes, the production. And would it have problems in the future with developing other spheres in country? Maybe it may lack or staying behind comparing with other countries, like other fields. I mean,
other fields like
maybe tourism or maybe agriculture, because of being left unattended.
How we can help those the poor people or some besides IT?
Yes, besides IT.
Yeah, the most venture capital money and those money is actually focused on the innovative, the companies, and innovative companies happens to be the ICT companies, and sometimes it's bio companies actually, biotechnology and things like that. but it could be there's other good companies actually. Their mission is to contribute society to make the better world and things like that. So it is also very important to helping those companies to grow and making more social ventures and helping making something better for the world. So there's also kind of interesting trend over that kind of social ventures. So there's also a lot of investors making those kind of investment for the social ventures is impact investment. So they're actually making probably relatively small investment, probably about hundreds of them, and a couple of $1 million for certain startups for making eco-friendly and making clean water for the poor peoples and things like that. And there are plenty of the new impact fund out there, and they're making investment and trying to change the world. And also government, Korean government also interested in growing those social ventures here. So they made a startup hub in Seongsu-dong over there, and also provide office space and also some kind of subsidy and grants for the social ventures.
Thank you for your lecture, first of all. I have a question. Does this Korean economy is really getting some kind of profit to provide this kind of startup companies with several ways? Is there any benefits to Korean economical growth? And the first question. And then second question is the selling this kind of startups to the foreign companies, as you said before, like Nanda sold by what we said,
selling
the selling to foreign companies. For example, Nanda sold by L'Oreal, right? Yeah. And then through that way, Korean economy is also getting some kind of benefits or not. And the third question is that yes, the selling, instead of the selling this kind of startups to the another companies, is it useful to develop more and then making more money and then providing the local startups, small startup companies, and then it maybe helps to that Korean economy grows also. Do you think like that or not? Please.
So your question is whether making this kind of successful startups actually benefits to entire Korean economy?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. As you know, those the innovative new companies actually, and they're making the new jobs out there, right? And also creating some new kind of new industry does not exist before. So I think that the whether we like or not, the society and the world is actually moving into the world of the new economy, right? So whether you like or not, everybody using a smartphone these days, right? So eventually there's some ad economy and things like that. So without actually growing this kind of new startups out there, the old companies, they are very slow to react that kind of new trend. So before the probably 2000, there's probably not that much online gaming company in Korea. But after that, after the success of the companies like Nexon or NCSoft and those, there are so many game companies out there, and they are actually hiring so many people. For example, the NCSoft, the successful online gaming company. Their employees about the 5,000, 6,000 here, and they're all probably half of them is developers actually making the new games. Actually, that kind of job did not exist before those game industries. So, if we are actually neglected to grow those game companies, and if you're just don't want to make that kind of entertainment game companies, actually probably Korea does not have that kind of new growth engine of the game, because those game companies actually made tons of the billions of money from the China market. So that also contributes to lots of the export, and things like that. So those game companies and IT companies and entertainment, K-pop and related companies, those new wave of company, clearly I said they contribute to the Korean economy as well. And even Samsung or SK, those companies, and they also invested in the semiconductor and things like that. And we need to see more, for example, semiconductor-related startup or smartphone startups, and we need more because it is kind of stimulating the existing companies as well. So it has to be some vibrant and make our economy more vibrant and not stagnant, and clearly make some more attractive new jobs for the younger generations. Because of the young people, they always wants to working for the new breed of the company like the Google or Facebook. They don't probably want to working for the old companies like the coal companies and GM or the things like that. So, what was your second question?
The second question is why Korean startup companies are selling to that foreign companies?
Actually. There's some, when there's some opportunity to make some lot of money for the entrepreneurs, just sell it, So the government would not, prohibit, banning those kind of opportunities. So, and so I think that if that specific entrepreneurs able to make some lot of money, 500 million for that, transactions. And we're hoping for that money actually stays in the Korea, and also making other investment for the startups, and circulate to the other companies, and creating more jobs and things like that. So that actually happened I think in Israel. So in Israel, and there was company named the ICQ, and it actually, back in 2000 or 99, it sold it to AOL. Actually, that was the beginning of the Israeli startup ecosystem, because the founder of the ICQ, the Internet Messenger program, he made a lot of money. He made his own venture fund and starting to making more investment for the other, companies, innovative companies. And then with that money, there's a growing of the number of the new companies, and they started to selling to the U.S. companies. So one of the most famous stories is probably recently the Mobileye, the Israeli automotive car technology company, sold it to Intel for 17 billion. So those monies probably flows into back to the Israel, and also makes a lot of investment for the but it could make a lot of rich people, and it can make some kind of some divide between rich people and poor people. It happens, but it is really hard to control that. So if you're trying to control, it's a kind of communist country, I think.
Thank you.
안녕하세요. 우선 강의 잘 들었고 질문이 두 가지가 있는데 그 첫 번째는 한국에는 이제 투자를 받을 때 일반 기업 투자자뿐만이 아니라 이제 정부에서도 투자를 해준다고 말씀을 해주셨잖아요. 근데 저는 그게 미국의 실리콘밸리의 스타트업이랑 가장 큰 차이점이라고 생각을 했는데, 미국 같은 경우에 정부에서 투자를 안 해주고 이제 정부가 이제 일반 투자자랑 그 스타트업만 이어준다고 하거든요. 근데 분명히 스타트업은 1년에 뭐 200만 개가 만들어지고 100개가 살아난다고 할 만큼 많이 망할 거란 말이에요. 근데도 이제 국가가 그런 손해를 감수하면서 투자를 해주고, 그리고 심지어 거기서 이제 이익을 40%밖에 돌려받지 않는다고 말씀하셨는데, 국가가 그런 걸 감수를 하면서도 해서 국가가 남는 게 있는지, 그리고 없다면은 왜 투자를 해주는지가 일단 궁금하고요. 그리고 두 번째로는 이제 만약 제가 아이템이나 뭐 타겟 포지션이 선정이 안 됐다면 저라면 스타트업을 인도나 중국이나 아니면 미국의 실리콘밸리에서 할 것 같거든요. 왜냐면은 세금이나 그리고 정부 규제가 없고, 그리고 투자자 문제가 거기가 투자자 시장이 더 넓으니까. 근데 그런 관점에서 봤을 때 한국의 스타트업이 분명히 시장이 작고 불리한데, 그럼에도 불구하고 한국의 스타트업 시장이 유리한 점이 다른 나라에 비교했을 때 있을지가 궁금해요.
이건 한국말로 질문하셨으니까 한국말로 답변을 드리면, 앞에 질문이랑 되게 비슷한데요. 이런 스타트업을 만들어서 새로운 기업들이 계속 나와야지 경제에 그 활력을 주고, 경제에 활력을 주고 새로운 뭐 일자리라든지 이런 것들을 계속해서 이렇게 만들어내고, 기존 기업들한테도 좀 자극을 주고, 그리고 그 나라의 경제, 이코노미가 새로운 글로벌한 그런 테크놀로지 변화라든지 이런 변화에 이렇게 적응하는 힘을 이렇게 좀 만들어주는 거죠. 왜냐하면 기업이란 것은 오래되면은 굉장히 좀 느려지고 많은 기업들이 망하거든요. 망하거나 잘 안 되고, 큰 기업에 이렇게 큰 기업에 들어가고 막 그런 것들이 있고, 그리고 또 중요한 것은 그런 새로운 도전을 하고 싶어하는 사람들이 되게 많다고요. 그냥 평생 공무원이 돼가지고 어떤 데서 이렇게 안전하게 사는 거를 좋아하는 사람도 있지만, 그게 아니라 새로운 기업을 만들어가지고 크게 키워보고 남들이 안 하던 것을 해보겠다라는 그런 사람들이 되게 많은 사회가 있을 거 아니에요. 어디가 좋겠어요? 어디에 활력이 있겠어요? 평생 안전하게 살려는 사람과 리스크 테이킹을 하려는, 그게 두 가지가 다르기 때문에 어느 나라나 그렇게 새롭게 도전하는 창업자들이 많이 나오고, 도전해서 새로운 회사들이 경제에 활력을 만들고 새로운 일자리를 만들고 새로운 사람들이 원하는 좋은 일자리라든지 이런 거를 만드는 그런 곳을 원하고, 그 베스트 케이스가 실리콘밸리인 거 아니에요. 실리콘밸리는 항상 보면은 구글이 있었는데 또 뭐 애플이 다시 살아나고, 그리고 우버가 나오고 에어비앤비가 나오고 테슬라가 나오고, 이런 식으로 계속 새로운 회사들이 나오면서 일자리를 많이 만들고, 좋은 일자리니까 전 세계 그 인재들이 다 가서 그렇게 하려고 그러고 그런다는 거죠. 그리고 두 번째 질문은 왜 그러면은 그 큰 시장으로 무조건 가야 되는 거 아니냐라고 했는데, 큰 시장이라든지 뭐 다른 데 이렇게 가면 그만큼 경쟁도 세고요. 미국에서 성공하는 거는 훨씬 더 돈이 많이 들고 어렵고, 예를 들어 또 뭐 중국이라든지 인도라든지 이런데 외국인이 가가지고 성공하는 것도 상당히 어렵고, 그리고 어디에 가면은 뭐 세금도 없고 뭐 또 레귤레이션도 없고 뭐 이런 것처럼 잠깐 얘기하셨는데, 그 각 나라마다 굉장히 특별한 레귤레이션이란 룰 같은 게 어디나 있거든요. 그래서 그런 거에 적응하고 뭐를 만들기가 되게 어렵기 때문에, 대개 사람들은 일단 자기 나라에서, 자국에서 뭔가 특별한 걸 만든 다음에 다른 나라로 가거나 그렇게 하는 경우들이 사실 많고요. 한국이 꼭 그렇게 작다고 아까 그랬잖아요. 근데 우리보다 훨씬 더 작은 나라들도 굉장히 많거든요. 굉장히 많은데, 한국 시장의 특징은 쿠팡 같은 그런 회사나 배달의 민족 같은 회사가 나오듯이 굉장히 많은 인구가 이렇게 집중된 마켓에 살고 있고, 그런 사람들이 온라인으로 물건을 사거나 이런 거에 굉장히 익숙해져 있는 그런 곳이기 때문에, 이게 여기에서 뭔가 큰 뭘 잘 만들면은 굉장히 큰 성공을 또 할 수 있는 그런 가능성이 있는 거죠. 그래서 그런 아까 얘기한 게 대표적인 게 게임 회사들이 한국에서 성공을 해서 글로벌하게 좀 많이 나간 그런 회사들이 있는 거죠.
This is not a question, just curious to know something. Like suppose if there are two investors, two foreigner investors in Korea, and one is investing $1 million and the other investor investing $2 million, and then Korean government will treat them equally, or they will differentiate.
Foreign investors?
Foreign investors.
Two foreign investors,
Yes.
and
One is investing
1 million and 2 million.
Yeah.
Korean government treating them equally.
Yes, I want to know if they will treat the government will treat.
Why would Korean government bother that those investors? They are making their own decisions and making.
No, but you said they also support them financially, they in the startup business.
It depends on whether they are seeking any benefit from the Korean government. It depends but the amount of money investment in the 1 million or 2 million, if there's any kind of some benefit for incentive for bringing foreign investment, and probably the bigger investment getting more incentive, I think. But I don't know. It's most of the foreign investors, they don't actually bother that much about the incentive from the government. They're only focusing on the potential growth of the company. That's more important for the future exit. Maybe you can get some incentive, the tax benefit from the government a little bit. But if the company is fail and closed, it doesn't matter at all. So they always focus on the potential of the company, the first, and they don't focus that much about the government.
Okay, thank you.
As an undergraduate students, what kind of power we should develop for participating in startup industry? I wonder that whether we have to choose specific industry like IT and make an expertise limited to specific area, or is it better to develop general skills like digital marketing, coding, sales skills, which could be applied to various areas?
I think that the most important skill for the entrepreneurs is I think problem solving. I think for startups, everything should start from the problem of myself, or problem of my friend, and problem of some people, some sectors, and because the problem means the business opportunity. So if you solve those problem, it's potential that you make some money or things like that. So you actually solving the problem with it could be a technology, or it could be just your labor or whatever. So you always testing yourself, always thinking that how can I do this? How can I do this? How can I? So it is very important to identify those problems out there, and so it is very important to have some good observations about the social problems and things different between the other countries and here, and why it works like that, and is there any competing product out there, solutions, and then maybe you can apply your own solution and thought, and that could develop as a business items, and then you form a your team and things like that. So I recommend you to maybe read or follow those kind of startup things and startup story of the famous companies like the Uber, Airbnb, and those companies. And there's always reason that they had so much struggle to grow the company and identify the problems and competing the competitor and things like that. And through that way, you're gaining those kind of skills and knowledge for the startups. And I also recommend you to working for the small startups, not that small startup, which means that the not so much early startup. I mean that probably over 20 people or less than 50 people. So that size, they probably has some good investment from the venture capital and their own good trajectory for the growth. And with that kind of company, you're probably able to see how they, cause the problem, how they solve, how they grow, and how they, develop their product, and how they hire, how they getting investment and things like that. So after that, you probably have much better sense of how to start startups. But without those kind of any knowledge and things like that, and just doing your stuffs, and you probably have so many trial and error. So time is almost up. So probably I have 5 minutes. So probably have last questions.
Thank you for your interesting lecture. And I have a question for you. So nowadays there are more and more startup companies, and many of them can't meet with the change of the society and fail. So does it has any negative effects to the economy and
you mean startups some negative effect of the startup?
No, I mean like many of the startup company they can't meet with the change of the.
Meet with the change.
I mean, they break down because they can't because of the risks they have, and then they break down. So does it has any negative effect to the economy? Yes, and what are they?
I can't really understand your question. Can anybody help me to understand the questions? Negative effect of the startups when they may change.
The startups cannot adapt to the changes of the society.
Change of society.
So the society changes very fast, and what the society demands changes. The startups that cannot adapt to the changes or the demands of the society, they end up failing. And then what she is asking if those failures affect negatively the economy.
I think that in order to make improve anything, and you don't need to apply the failure. So failure, I would say failure is inevitable in order to make success, because of the most of startup is fail, as you know. So accumulating those failure, experience of the failure could be the real seed of the success, I think. So I don't see that much some negativity to our society and economy of startup failure. And probably the more failure means that the more successful case, and also which means that the startup ecosystems have more experience. So please don't think failure as a negative things. It's inevitable. So with that failure, you just think it as a opportunity to learn more and grow. So there's some very interesting theory named lean startup out there, and lean startup meaning that fast failure kind of things, and rather than make the perfect some product during long time, and you just try to some little bit immature product and make it getting the feedback and improve over and over very fast. So please don't afraid of the failures. Okay. Okay. Thanks for taking such a long time, 2 hours.